What a game. Fremantle nearly Collingwood. 10-15, 75 Collingwood, 11-9, 75 Fremantle. 31 scoring shots to 21 in Collingwood's favour with an expected score of 95 to 60 in Collingwood's favour. We're left with the draw. The Pies are up by 25 points at some point in the fourth quarter, and with some help, Fremantle still a draw against a relatively inexperienced side as far as the bottom six players were concerned. Before we get into our usual proceedings, usually I leave these things to the football nuffies of the world, but I'm going to have at it. Matthew Nicholls, the head umpire for the game, a complete, utter, systematic failure on the game of football in that last quarter for the AFL entirely, for everyone to see. And it wasn't just that decision that we saw made against Lachie Sullivan. It was a decision prior to that where Isaac Quaynor had touched that shot on goal from around the 50-metre arc. And you could see the goal umpire was never going to call that for review, given how far away he was from the play. And I don't mind that because the score review can sometimes be a bit tedious and a bit laborious. So what they do is the review system, wherever they're located, the headquarters, they review that play as they return to the centre bounce. And you could see clearly there was a deviation in Isaac Quaynor's fingers as the ball passed his hand. And I think in that moment, whoever was operating those headquarters, I feel like they just lost their nuts. It was clear, it was there to be made, and they weren't bold enough to let the umpires know, hey, this was touched by Quaynor. So we're down a goal there thanks to that non-call on that deviation of the fingers of Isaac Quaynor. Moving on to the next one, we talk about Lachie Sullivan giving it to Nick Dacos and then Nick Dacos handing it to Matthew Nicholls. I think that was completely fine. By definition, sure, it's not acceptable. But if you're going to pay that there, in that moment, in that scenario, then you need to be paying all the times players run the ball over the boundary and drop it on the ground or hand it to the crowd. Like, if that's what we're going to do, play it literally by the letter of the law and pay it every single time. Not just this time when Fremantle are all down but out, but you're feeling a little bit generous and give Fremantle a get-out-of-jail-free card in the last 10 minutes to get on a run and give Sean Darcy a shot from essentially 10 metres out. And it wasn't just last night, it was Thursday night where Vandermeer for Bulldogs, he made a play on a marking contest that he thought he could have an impact on, and it fell out of the Sydney's player's hands. I forget who it was. It may have been Amadi. But the umpire calls 50 metres in a moment where the game is so tight and a 50-metre penalty will be so harsh, and they pay that, and they ruined the game. They get on a power trip and they ruined the fucking game. And Matthew Nicholls did that for Fremantle last night and gave them a chance to come into the game where Collingwood had this amazing, valiant performance given the circumstances, and now we have to walk away with a stupid draw. They're going to be started on that. I think there should be extra time. I think somebody's got to win and somebody's got to lose. Play an extra 5 minutes, and if it's a draw at 5 minutes, go to a 50-metre shootout or something like that. But that's a story and a discussion for another day. Matthew Nicholls and the umpires, you have failed the AFL world miserably in the last 48 hours. Shame. Fucking shame. All right, moving on to what we usually focus on, and that is the actual game itself. I promise you I don't always do this. I would never do this, but I just feel like I had to have my rant just that one time to get some steam off the chest. But key team takeaways. So we're looking at stoppage dominance for the Pies. We know going into the game, Fremantle were extremely dominant. They were number 2 clearance side, even though they didn't score very well. They were middle of the pack for their score sources from stoppages. Collingwood generated 14 scoring shots from stoppage sources last night. 4 goals, 10 behinds. So I said before, with the expected score being 95 to 60, had we kicked a little bit straighter in these situations, the game would have been a completely different conversation to the one we're having now. But nevertheless, and on top of all of that, Freo only had 5 scoring shots from their stoppage sources, despite the dominance they've had in the last 5 odd weeks from their clearance work. So a real tick there for Collingwood when it comes to the stoppages, and if we kick straight, it's a different story. Darcy Cameron was the highest rated player for the game. He had 21 disposals, 11 hitouts to advantage, giving our midfielders first use, players like Nick Dacos, Jack Crisp, Josh Dacos, who rolled through sometimes. He also had 10 clearances and another 3 intercept marks. So I talked about how Darcy Cameron is the #1 marking ruckman in the league, and he further solidified that case last night with those 3 intercept marks against probably the most dangerous or imposing ruckman duo in the league in Sean Darcy and Luke Jackson. You can argue the synergy between Sean Darcy and Luke Jackson has been off since the inception of that duo joining together, but nevertheless, Darcy Cameron still had to ruck against both of them at different times throughout the game, with Mason Cox out for most of the second half as well. Another key to our stoppage dominance was the fact that Nick Dacos was always thereabouts. He had 10 clearances and 3 shots on goal, which could have very well resulted in goals. He was close. I think some just fell short or sort of came off the side of his boot. And talking about his disposal efficiency over the last few weeks, I think it's unwarranted. I watched that game yesterday and I thought Nick Dacos used his left foot quite a bit. I think there should be 2 different stat categories: kicking efficiency with your preferred foot and your opposite foot. And that would paint a clearer picture as to why Nick Dacos' efficiency has been down as of late. And even in saying that, his left foot is incredible and is probably better than a lot of AFL players' preferred foot. And then when you stack on top the missed shots on goal, which hurts his efficiency, that is probably why it's down more than usual. And then, of course, you stack on top furthermore the fact that he's playing in the contest a lot more. So those are the variables that point towards a lesser efficiency, but I think it's not quite right. I think we know what Nick Dacos does and we know why his efficiency is kind of down at the moment and it's not warranted. The Pies continue to do very well in the contested ball round. We were +10 for the game. Lachie Sullivan had 14 contested possessions, a season high for the man who has come in and done a job while Tom Mitchell has been out with that lingering foot issue, and I think he's held his own. He had a couple shots on goal yesterday that he could have converted and had a much more pleasing stat line. Nick Dacos, 10 contested possessions, averaging 16 contested possessions in his last 5 games where he's played pretty much full-time midfield. So he's just taken his game to an unbelievable level that we maybe didn't foresee, particularly in the midfield. And Darcy Cameron, 12 contested possessions. And hold on, compared to Darcy and Jackson, had a combined 17. So Darcy Cameron, who had 12, was only 5 contested possessions behind Sean Darcy and Luke Jackson's combined 17 for the game. What an effort for Darcy Cameron last night. I thought outside of the first half of the first quarter, we really forced Freo to play our game. They did chip away in that first quarter, but in the second half, they had a 0.75 kick to handball ratio, which is pretty much just more handballs to kicks in that entire second half of Fremantle, which forces to keep the game in motion and keep it on Collingwood's terms. They weren't able to find any backwards uncontested marks to stop the frontal pressure that we were able to apply. So really kudos to the coaching panel to be able, and the game strategists to be able to input a game that would force Fremantle to come into our home as far as game plans are concerned and butt heads in there. And it worked for the most part of the game. And if, like I said, if it wasn't for a few shitty umpire decisions, we'd be having a different conversation this morning. I want to talk about probably the most positive outcome from this game. It was the fact that our inexperienced bunch held down the fortress with a myriad of players out that would typically, I guess, fill the roles that our youngsters are being asked to play right now. Our average games for yesterday was 105 games per player, which is down from a typical 123 games when fully fit, which is basically a full season per player was missing yesterday, which is massive. And just further kudos must be given to these youngsters and inexperienced players who came in and did a job last night. Joe Richards, wow, this is going to be concerning because when Jamie Elliott is fit and all the small forwards are fit and firing, ready to go, who falls out of the team? I think Beau McCreary could be in trouble, or a Lachie Schultz as well, because Joe Richards is playing way too good to drop him. He had 22 disposals last night, 9 contested possessions, a goal assist, 7 score involvements, and he was the second highest rated player for Collingwood and 3rd overall for the game. He looks so comfortable out there. He's clean, he's composed. There's a lot to like about this man, and I think he's going to cause some selection dramas over the next month or so. I'm very certain of that. Harvey Harrison, another one who's just taking the Collingwood world by storm. He was the 3rd highest rated Pies player and the 4th overall for the game. Just extremely efficient last night. 13 disposals, 3 shots, 3 goals, and 9 tackles as well. So he found a way to stay busy throughout the game, whether it was touching the ball or applying pressure on the opposition, and he did both of those very well. So his wing position is all but solidified, and if Steele Sidebottom can't keep his home in a half-back flank position, I highly doubt he's going to be able to return to the wing position where Harvey Harrison is currently occupying as that defensive wingman. I thought Ed Allen battled. He had 7 disposals, going at a 42% disposal efficiency as the other defensive wingman when Harvey Harrison wasn't on the field. He was outrun by Jeremy Sharp, who was the other wingman for Fremantle. He had 26 disposals, 1 goal and 1 goal assist. But it's all a learning curve. When you're in your first game and you've got to come up against a wingman who's doing really well this season. And I'm talking about Jeremy Sharp. I think he's been very impressive. There's some strong learning curves in that. So not too much to judge on Ed Allen's first game. It was a difficult game to come into. And at the end of the day, all that matters is he's got a senior game under his belt and can build from there. Charlie Dean was really solid. He didn't take any intercept marks yesterday, but I thought he did well with the ball in hand. And it didn't do anything wrong. I thought he was really impressive, and I think there's a spot for him to hold down if the opportunity presents over the next few weeks. Will Parker came on as a sub once Mason Cox was ruled out with that concussion/knee injury. Will Parker has 6 disposals, 3 contested possessions, 3 intercept possessions, and a goal assist. If I could describe his performance with one word, I'd say it was composed. I thought there was a really nice sequence. I think it was in the last quarter where he received the ball in the back line. I think it was a ground ball get. He was quite clean with it, picked it up and dished it out, handballed it out wide, and then we had a really nice sequence which may have resulted in a shot on goal. So really a lot to like about this man. I would love to see him start on the field soon and really get a good, I guess, vibe for what he's about and why Fly McRae and the rest of Collingwood are so big on him. But we saw some glimpses as to why maybe he has a spot in the starting 22 when it comes to the final series this year. And Lucky Sullivan, like I said, 14 contested possessions, 24 disposals, 2 shots at goal that could have resulted in goals for himself. Really impressive thus far since he's come in. He had a few iffy moments last night, but that will come being inexperienced. Like I said, 6 players under 5 games or less last night is a massive ask and a huge mountain to climb. And we did much more than climb that mountain. We conquered it until we were robbed by the yellow team. What you may have not noticed in the 4th quarter was the fact that Mason Cox was out and Brody Myercheck with that hamstring awareness, which means we had no keys to target long down the line. Sure, Billy Frampton swung forward, and even Ed Allen was asked to play forward on Alex Pearce, their best defender. So we had players who weren't accustomed to the role typically, and that probably hurt our, I guess, the final outcome from a structural standpoint. Just no key tools to really just, you put it on Myercheck's head, and you know maybe he won't mark it, but you know he's going to create a contest and give something for our ground ball players. So that really hurt us in the 4th quarter. Another negative, particularly early in the game, I thought we failed to navigate around players like Alex Pearce and Jordan Clark. I thought Alex Pearce was outstanding that first quarter and kicked that goal in the 4th quarter. First quarter alone, he had 4 intercept marks, finishing with 5 for the game, whereas Jordan Clark had 3 intercept marks, and they collected 18 intercept possessions combined for the game. So a massive effort for them too in the back line. And I think Jordan Clark collected a bunch of disposals as well. So he had a really good game. And Fremantle ended up winning the intercept mark count 16-10. I just want to highlight some slight positional changes from last night. I think with Ed Allen playing on the wing for the most part of the game, it gave Josh Dacos an opportunity to roll through the midfield. He had 26% centre bounce attendances, whereas last week he had 0. So I think we flirted with our rotations in the middle a little bit, with Beau McCreary as well coming back into the team. He had 17% centre bounce attendances. I actually think he's daring to explode. He's He's a daring player, he's valorous, he's got no fear, and I like that in a midfield. He's willing to take the game on. And sometimes it backfires on him, like last night he got caught holding the ball in the wing, trying to take on one too many players. But I think as he finds continuity in the midfield and being higher up the ground, I think that's really going to pay dividends, and he could be that power player, that impact player like a Jordan De Goey. Another nice positive for Collingwood as a team was the fact that we're able to keep Caleb Serong relatively quiet. He's been averaging 33 disposals for the season, which is a league high. Last night he had 25 disposals, so 8 down from his typical average, only 4 score involvements, and his counterpart Nick Dacos did what he usually does, and that's dominate the midfield contest. So really good positive for the Collingwood boys there, keeping someone like Caleb Serong to a minimal impact. Looking at the Player Performance Centre, I want to highlight some players that maybe we don't talk about as much from last night's game, given how many impressive performances there were. Patrick Lipinski had 21 disposals, 7 inside 50s, 1 goal, 3 goal assists, and 8 score involvements. So those 3 goal assists would be close to a career high, if not a career high. His kicking inside 50 was extremely efficient, and he was a shell of a player last season with the shoulder injury and coming in late to the team. But this season, he's had that full preseason to work on, and he's come in and he's playing his role and beyond what he's being asked of. And I think if it wasn't for our star-studded midfield right now, and Lipinski was at a lesser team, he'd be a full-time midfielder. So maybe there is an opportunity for Paddy Lipinski to play midfield at some point later in his career. Brody Mychek, got to give this man his flowers. 12 disposals, 6 contested possessions, 2 contested marks, 2 goals, 2, so 4 scoring shots. He's just a Spartan. Puts himself in precarious positions every single time. It's kind of sickening. It's sickening in the sense that when I watch him play, it looks like he loves going back with the flight of the ball in the aerial contest. Like, he puts his body on the line every single time and he has no disregard for what the repercussions could be. It's sickening, but I love it at the same time. And that's what makes Brody Mychek. He brings the ball to ground if he doesn't mark it and generates scores for our ground ball players. It was unfortunate to see Brody Mychek miss the back end of the game with that hamstring awareness. It's likely he'll miss a couple more weeks on the sidelines, and Collingwood probably will take a more conservative approach given how recurring the hamstring can be at the best of times, especially at the age beyond 30. Injuries, Mason Cox, like I said, was KO'd mid-air, at least I thought he was, and then his knee pretty much folded underneath him like a chair, which was, yeah, not nice to see. But we saw Frampton swing forward and pinch hit in a ruck when Darcy Cameron needed a spell when that injury happened. Does that mean Nathan Kruger has to come in next week to help out Darcy Cameron? We'll see. Mychek hamstring awareness. Ash Johnson, is that his final opportunity? De Goey is likely to miss, and as well as Howe, so maybe it leaves the door slightly ajar for one more opportunity for Ash Johnson at AFL level. Scott Pendlebury, biceps too big? I don't know. I think he strained his right bicep, so he could miss weeks potentially. We'll get more on that as the days unfold. And yeah, Collingwood on an 8-game unbeaten streak, an inspiring performance by our inexperienced players in particular at a hostile crowd in Perth against the Dockers. Is it a win? It's a moral win, but we were robbed. Thanks, guys.